This video is intended for educational purposes only and is not a replacement for repairs or diagnostics by qualified technicians. All commentary is pure satire and not directed at any individual or company.
Hey, how's it going? So, time for a good old-fashioned repair video. I've had a number of people contacting me, actually like 4 of them in the last 2 weeks, where they've gotten errors on their joysticks on their permobil. Basically, you turn on the joystick, it comes up with an error, chair won't move at all. Now, there's 1 or 2 of 4 different errors, but basically they all come back to the joystick centering. So joystick not centered when powered up, or joystick gimbal not seen. I forget what the 4 errors, the codes actually are. But if you've gotten one of those errors and you've looked it up, and it has something to do with the joystick centering, there is a good chance that something inside here has come unplugged. I've had it happen personally 3 different times to myself on different chairs. Now granted, they were the older style joysticks like this one, but most of the chairs being sold these days are going to have a larger joystick like this, or the slightly smaller version like this. So we're going to take apart both of these things, and I'm going to show you what I have found in my chairs that have broken, and what other people have found in theirs that was able to get them going again. This is where I need to say something about taking apart your joystick. There's a lot of very small wires in here. There's a lot of sensitive electronics. This screen is very delicate. The ribbon cable that goes over the top to hold the screen in is very delicate. Don't attempt this. Don't take this thing apart unless you're comfortable with electronics. If you've done soldering, if you've assembled PCBs or done any sort of electronic stuff. If you're not familiar with that, well, there isn't any soldering in this repair involved at all, but just as a prerequisite, if you're comfortable doing soldering, you're probably fine taking one of these apart. It is very easy to damage one of these things simply by taking it apart. You gotta move really slow when you're separating the cases. You gotta go real easy, not apply any force. So, all that being said, I'm going to share with you what I have found to be the problem in a lot of these cases. It's not 100% going to fix your chair, and it may be a completely different problem that's not related to this, but I found a lot of times when your joystick, when you turn it on and your joystick throws those errors and your chair doesn't move, you're not going anywhere. You can't move. You can't use your chair. I mean, if your chair's not working, you can't do anything. And if you call your provider and they say, oh yeah, we'll get out in a few weeks or maybe a month or sometimes longer, it's already broken, in my opinion. Why not see if you can get it going? I'm not gonna lie, unplugging some of the cables and opening the cases on some of this will probably result in some scratches and some marring of the plastics. But again, in my opinion, it's better to have a slightly scuffed up chair or a controller that maybe has a little piece of plastic broken on it that works, as opposed to not having a chair at all for a month or 2 or 3. Anyways, let's jump into this and I'll show you what I've found. Did I just say that? I'm over it. I'm a YouTuber, whatever. As far as getting the joystick off your chair, we're gonna use this 2017 Permobil M3 as an example. As you can see, it's got the newer style large screen joystick on it. And when you flip these up, there's usually going to be a couple of screws on the bottom here. Now, it's a little difficult to show how to do this on every chair because there's so many different mounting methods, and a lot of chairs are mounted different. Some have custom armrests. So I'm just going to use this chair as an example and give you an idea of what it could potentially look like or what to look for when you're uninstalling this. So the first thing you want to do typically to make it easier is just lift your armrest all the way up. This is a little bit tricky to film because I'm kind of reaching around a tripod to do this, but some chairs are going to have a swing away mount here. This one does not. It just has kind of a solid mount. What you want to look for is 2 screws on the bottom of the joystick. They're typically going to be Allen cap screws. They might be Phillips, but majority of the chairs are Allen. So you just want to find these and basically take them out. Now on the permobiles, those two screws are going to be holding on. It's a little bit crooked because I started taking it apart and then realized I should probably film this, but it's going to be holding on the joystick itself as well as your seating switches, or the ICS switches as they're called. The same two screws on the bottom hold both of these on. The screws are a little loose at the moment, so you can see these both kind of move. So with this flipped up, we're basically just going to loosen these two screws and take them all the way out. You want to hold all this stuff. Actually, I should probably turn the chair off. You want to hold all this stuff in place because once these screws come out, all this stuff is just going to try and basically fall apart. So we'll pop these out of here. And then you can see that, well, there's a zip tie holding that. Should probably use some cutters for this. I don't feel like going into the other room, so I'm going to use this knife very carefully. Okay, zip tie removed. Now you want to pay attention to how all this wiring is here, because routing this back in the same way is going to be pretty important. Did I just cut that? No, that was already like that. Yeah, there's no way I just cut that. Anyways, these parts are going to kind of come loose. And then on these newer style joysticks, the RNet cable is detachable. On the older style ones, there was nothing that came out, so you had to follow the wire all the way down and try to unplug it somewhere down here. Luckily on these ones, that is not the case. I believe the easiest way is to very gently grab this cable, and this plug is going to come straight out. So you want to kind of grab it. You don't want to pull really hard on this because you can break the cable. Just kind of, there you go, carefully wiggle it. And there you can see, there's our RNet connector. And these kind of snap into place if you listen closely. So all you got to do is pull just enough, and wiggling back and forth is really important. And that'll just come right out. Now that we have this, let's go back over to the table and I'll show you how to take this apart. All right, back on the table here. Got a green background, so maybe it's a little easier to see things, but here we have our joystick, and I also happen to have one of these larger ones as well. So we're gonna take both of these apart and see if there's any difference really. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, I can see there are some differences. But as you can see, some of these larger joysticks may have a pigtail on there. It still disconnects in the same way. Fair warning, I'm about to do something that's incorrect. I'm leaving this in the video because I want you to know I'm not an expert. I'm just sharing the information that I've found, and as I find it, I share it with you guys. I'm still learning just like everyone else, and sometimes you run across stuff that you can't tell how it's gonna be or how exactly it comes apart. You just gotta kind of look at things and figure out what's going on. But I'm leaving this in the video so that you can see you just gotta be careful. Okay, so that one doesn't want to come out. This one seems like it might be a little different. I think we're gonna leave this one alone. I might have been wrong there. We're gonna take this apart second. But let's go back to the one that came off of our M3 here. On the bottom, there's gonna be some Torx screws. There's 2 of them here, 1 on each side, and then we've got 2 more on each top corner. Now I'm just using kind of a cheap Harbor Freight toolkit here. Looks like it says T10. I don't know if that's right. But anyways, Torx bit is what you want. And we're just gonna pop all these screws out of here. Hope I didn't break that other joystick. Oh, and it looks like there's one more down here on the bottom where that cord comes through as well. There we go. All 5 screws are out. They all look to be the same size. And the idea here is this center section should just lift out. Now you want to be careful. There's a lot of things connected in here, so you don't want to just rip this off. You want to be careful. There's a lot of really tiny wires. So we'll just kind of lift this out carefully and slowly. And then we can kind of tilt it back, and you can see we got a bunch of wires in there. These wiring cables all have pin headers or connectors on them, so you should be able to carefully reach down in there and pull these loose. So we're going to start with this one here. Okay, that one's loose. Now we can see a little bit better. There's number 2. And there's number 3. Here we have the inside of the joystick. Is that something that's broken? Oh yeah, part of the casing broke. So the chair that this joystick came off of has like 1,700 miles on it. It's pretty heavily used. So yeah, anyways. Yeah, just to show you the inside, here's the back of our RNet port. And we've got the charging port and the pins there. And those feed into all these headers. So we want to dig into this thing a little bit further. If I recall now, I think we can separate this front housing from the back. Let's see here. Yeah, so we're just going to kind of put our thumb on the gimbal in there and sort of push gently. And then, hang on here, let me look with a flashlight. Ah, okay. So, this little thing here at the top has to come out. Technically, a spanner wrench should be used for this. You can see there's 2 dots there. They were horizontal, and what I did was I took these 2 little tiny screwdriver bits and I put them in each side and turned it counterclockwise. That's really difficult to do without scratching up the plastic, so you've just got to be careful there. And now that this is rotated, I believe it should come out of here. There we go. So this is kind of a weird little plastic latch. You can see there. And it's supposed to have some sort of spanner wrench to turn this, but you turn it in the counterclockwise direction, and now we should be able to take this the rest of the way apart. There we go. And there is a rubber gasket in here. Depending on how old your joystick is, this might try and come out with it. So you just want to be careful when you're pulling this apart. I'll pull this out so you can see it. There we go. See, rubber gasket. So as you're pulling that out, you just want to be mindful that that's not tearing or anything like that. Okay, getting on to our problem. A lot of times what causes these errors is this gimbal that the joystick or the control is attached to will come unplugged. They've got little connectors right here, and there's another one up here. And I've seen in a number of occasions where these things just come loose. Now on this particular joystick, you can't really get to that connection very easily because this board's attached. So we're gonna go a little bit deeper here, and we're gonna pull off this circuit board. There's 2 more Torx screws for this. Now you wanna be really careful with this because the screen is underneath there, and that can be damaged very easily. So we're going to take these 2 off. There we go. There's 3 screws. And this should kind of lift up a little bit. Now our screen ribbon cable is along the top here, so you got to be super careful with that. But if you look closely, now you can see this connector right here on the other side of this ribbon cable that goes to the gimbal. Now that I'm looking at this, I don't think that's a connector. I think it's soldered directly to the board. Yeah, that is. Okay, so we didn't need to take the circuit board out necessarily. We can see this ribbon cable a little bit better now. We just want to inspect that and make sure there's no cracks or anything. But I'm going to put this board back on here because I don't want to damage the screen. That looks fine. Okay, those are all in. So the main thing you want to look at after we've got these 2 halves taken apart is this connector right here in your gimbal. This, for whatever reason, tends to come loose on a lot of chairs, which I'm going to try and unplug this, and it's probably not going to want to unplug at all. Let's see here. There we go. So when you open this thing up, you want to look at this cable and see if it's just flopping around in here. If this is not connected, there are kind of some little latches that hold it in place, but for whatever reason, a lot of times these things will come loose. And it might even just barely be attached, but not all the way. Like if you look here, it looks like it's plugged in, but it's just barely sitting there. So this is the connector you want to check. And you want to be really careful about lining these pins back up with the holes that are in this little cable. But basically all you do, if it is loose, is line the thing up and gently push it back down into place. Now it kind of clicks in, but as you can see, it kind of wobbles around even though it's attached in there. Now what I've done on some other chairs for this is I've put a little bit of hot glue on the corners of this connector just to hold it in place. Now things in here do get warm, and you don't want to put a bunch of hot glue that's going to interfere with everything, but I'm not sure how else to hold this in place. I've had this happen on a number of chairs. For some reason this will come loose, and on some of the older joysticks this connection up here is removable and that'll come loose. There is some Celastic, I call it Celastic ooze. I forget what it's called exactly, but it's sort of like hot glue, sort of like silicone, but it gives a good mechanical connection. If I can figure out what that product is or the name of the stuff, I'll put it on the screen. But I've seen some chairs where I take them apart and they actually have some of that material on here to hold this in place. So anyways, not 100% that that's going to be your problem, but this is one thing you can check if you're getting joystick centering errors right when you turn on your chair and it doesn't want to move at all, and power cycling it a number of times doesn't have any effect whatsoever. This gimbal can become disconnected, or this cable can become damaged. Now ultimately I suppose that some of these other connectors on this part of the joystick could potentially come loose as well, but typically if these come loose, you're gonna have other problems or the chair is not even gonna turn on. Anyways, now that we've checked this, we're gonna go ahead and put this thing back together. Basically exactly the reverse. You wanna check your gasket in there, make sure it's in place. And then we're going to set this back together. The top kind of goes in first and the bottom hinges in, just like that. I'll do that again to show you. Top goes in, and then just like that. Then at this point we can put in the top two screws here just to kind of hold the unit together and make it easier to plug in the wires. There we go. Now all these connectors are different, so you can't plug them into the wrong spot on the board. But as always, it is good to keep track of where all these connectors go, so when you go to put it back together it's not as much of a mystery. So we're going to carefully plug these back in. Start with the longest one. Well, this is a little bit fiddly, trying to do this. My hands work pretty well, but definitely not something for the faint of heart to attempt to take apart. And these pins can get damaged pretty easily as well. Let's see here, trying to get an angle on this. There we go. So there's that one. And the next one, and finally the third one. Okay, double check and make sure those are completely seated all the way. There we go. Now you don't want to put any glue or anything like that, or hot glue or Celastic or anything on the connectors in here, just because they need to be able to be taken apart to even get the joystick open for servicing. Which, let's be real, I don't think DMEs take these apart and fix them, they just replace them. So, yeah, anyways. Same thing as before, we'll just kind of lower this down in here. Be careful not to pinch any of the wires. There we go. Now we can put the rest of our screws back in. Make sure these are all snug. Oh. Okay, so that's what that plastic piece was. This plastic piece fell out of there. See how when I push on that, it kind of opens up? So the bottom of the plastic on this is broken now, which means this isn't going to seal. I mean, it's going to stay in place okay, but yeah. This thing's got a lot of use on it, so I guess that's something to note when you're taking it apart. Things might break. Now we're going to put this weird little plug back in here. I don't really understand what this is for. I mean, it looks like it's maybe a test point. There's a bunch of contacts down there. So after they build the joystick, they can test it. This thing's keyed. As you can see, there's only 3 tabs on it. So you've got to put it back in there the right way. Push that down. And then we're just going to use these 2 screwdriver bits. Again, you should have a spanner wrench for this, but in this case, this works fine. It is kind of marring up the edges a little bit, but, you know, having a joystick that's slightly scratched is probably better than having one that doesn't work at all. There you go. Now you can see these 2 holes are directly perpendicular or straight across there. All right, so there we go. That's this one. Now this one is brand new. I'm going to be very careful with this. I still would like to take it apart though, just to see if there's any differences. And also, when I was trying to get this out earlier, yeah, that doesn't seem happy now. So it looks like on this one we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 screws holding it together. So we're going to carefully take these out and see if we can figure out if I damaged anything or not. And also, mostly, if the inside's any different as far as that gimbal ribbon cable connection is. Interesting. So the screws in this one we're screwing into plastic. These are metal machine screws, and they're screwing into metal. So that's one interesting difference so far. Okay, let's see here. This should just lift out like before. There we go. Oh! Okay, well there's our problem. So the difference between these 2 joysticks, this smaller one, the cable is removable. On this larger one, it looks the same, but it's not. This is retained in place inside with a metal clip. So this cannot be unplugged from the outside. If you notice right here, see this little bit of metal? That slides in and holds this cable in place. If I wiggle it, you'll see. See how that's wobbly now? As I was trying to pry that out of there, I bent that little metal piece. So, if your joystick is one of the larger ones and it has this pigtail on it, don't try and unplug this. See, we're learning things. Luckily, I can fix that fairly easily. Yeah, our cables in here, there's 3 connectors as per usual, but they're arranged a little bit differently. So we'll get these unplugged. An interesting note, I'm not going to take the housing completely off of this one because we can see in here, but interesting note, our ribbon cable is a little bit longer and connects to the other side of the logic board in here. So same thing as before, if you do see that this thing is loose in here, or when you pull up on this, it just pops out of there, same problem, just plug it back in. And if that's the case, you may have to separate this housing. Again, we've got this weird little twisty plug on the top. Really should have a spanner wrench for that. Now, in America, a spanner wrench refers to a wrench that has 2 pins that you can rotate. I know in other countries a spanner wrench is what we call an adjustable wrench or a monkey wrench. But basically you need a wrench that has 2 pins that are adjustable that go in and has a handle that you can turn to do that properly. Okay, let's see about fixing this now. Yep, so my prying actually damaged this. I don't know if we can see this on camera. Yeah, this little metal bracket here is bent. See how it moves around now? So what I can do is pull that out of there and bend it back. Let me grab a pair of pliers. So we're going to use a pair of pliers and pull this little clip out of here. Which apparently it looks like it interferes with some of these wires. So again, be super careful. Yeah, see? It's bent. See how this edge is like a little bit taller? So we're just going to tweak this back into place. There we go. It looks a little straighter than it was. And we can put this back in. By the way, just so you can see, now that this clip is removed, this whole center section is able to move freely. And that'll come out. Now it doesn't do you a lot of good because everything is soldered in place, But if you did have to replace this, that's how you do it. This little retaining clip is what holds everything in there. So we'll carefully try and put this back in without knocking these little wires loose. Wait, how did they do that? That's a really weird... I guess it fits in there. It's just these wires right here are so tiny, you could cut those. Yeah, there we go, see? Now it's nice and solid. They are a little bit different. More screws holding this one together. Cable's not removable. Less screws on this one. Cable is removable, which is super handy. They both use the same type of gimbal and same type of ribbon cable and have the same failure point right here where this connector can come loose. Yeah, there's not a lot of space in this one, so again, you want to be careful about all those wires and not pinching them when you put this together. Okay, let's take these back over to their respective chairs and make sure they still turn on and work. Back over here at our chair, before we get too crazy, I'm just going to plug this in and make sure it powers up because, yeah. Hey, look at that. It seems to work. And the chair moves. Excellent. Let's get it mounted back up. Actually, I just remembered. On this particular chair, I'm not going to put it back together because we do have a frayed cable right here. I need to take that apart and fix it before I put it back together. So anyways, putting this thing back together is just like you took it apart. You just want to line everything up here and get your screws in so everything's all solidly mounted. And as you can see, we've got this torn wire right here. I don't know if that was a result of the way it was mounted or what happened exactly, but again, just be careful. So I'm just going to leave this one for now and I will come back to it later. I realize it's dark in here, but this other joystick, I just wanted to plug it in and make sure it's still good. Cool, there we go. Still alive, and the chair moves. Excellent. Oh, I forgot. Turning them off is different on this one. There we go. Well, hopefully this video was helpful. I was kind of exploring things a little bit. I hadn't had one of those joysticks apart in a number of years. Back in like 2018, I made a video taking apart 3 different kinds of joysticks. I will link that up above and down below if you want to watch that old video. I've gotten a number of people asking me about this problem, and I've had it happen to several chairs where that connector comes loose. In that other video, I took out the screws and I didn't film that part, so I figured there's enough of this happening that it warrants its own dedicated video. And unlike some people may try to say that run certain message boards or live in other countries, I'm not a YouTube expert. I'm not an expert. I am on YouTube and I do share my thoughts. I do have a lot of experience with these chairs because I've broken a lot of them and I figured out how to fix them. But we're all learning, we're all exploring this stuff, we're all trying to figure out what's going on. I'm gonna be getting a brand new F3 here probably at the end of this next month. And of course, we're gonna tear into that thing and take a look at it, see what's different, see what's changed. It's all about learning and sharing information that we all find with each other. So that's the main goal here. I'm not gonna say that anything in this video is 100% correct and you need to follow procedures exactly. I'm just sharing what I've learned and the way I've found to take things apart and some of the common things I've seen. This channel's not that big, but I hear from a lot of people with a lot of recurring problems. And if a few people are contacting me, there's gotta be a lot more out there that are encountering similar issues. So anyways, there you go. That's what I do here. I try to share information that I have and try to help people get stuff going. If your chair is already broken and it's not moving and you've got to wait 3 months, I mean, they're probably going to replace the joystick anyways. If you're careful, why not take the thing apart and see if you can get it going? You know, that's reasonable. If something does get broken in the process, but you still get the chair working, they can't fault you for that. If it's going to take them a month or 2 or 3 to come out and fix your chair, and you have the ability or the potential ability to maybe get the thing going, it's definitely worth trying. There you go. That's all I got to say about it. Anyways, thanks for watching. Let me know down below if you've actually done this repair or if you've had similar errors or other tips or tricks that you've had or ways that things have been fixed if you've had joystick errors. Anyways, catch you guys later.